The following is a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club. 20 international chess professionals compete in St. Louis as USChessChamps.com presents the second annual Fall Chess Classic. Happy weekend, everybody. Welcome to the St. Louis Chess Club, where for most it's their day off, but not for these players. We're going straight through to the finish line, and we're only at the midway point. So come on into the studio, grab your pumpkin, 'tis the season, and join us for round number 4 of the Fall Chess Classic. My name is Ben Simon, and I'm joined as always by International Master Eric Rosen. Eric, it's going to be a fun day. I'm so pumped for today and seeing who's going to emerge in these fields.
Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. We had a peaceful day yesterday, a lot of draws, but hopefully today will be a bit more bloody.
Oh my. Well, let's see how bloody it is so far. First in Group A, these are the standings after 3 rounds have been completed. Now, yesterday, Alexei Dreyev dispatched of the Chess Bra, sorry for all of you YouTubers out there, and he is now in clear lead with 2.5 points. And then after that, man, it's anybody's chess tournament here. What do you make of this so far, Eric?
Yeah, I'm impressed with Dreyev. I feel like he's the most solid player based on the result and based on his play. He really just took the grind down to Hansen yesterday, won a pawn out of the opening and converted in very clean fashion. So there's still many games to go, so we'll see if he can hold on to his lead or if players just behind can catch up.
Also notable in this field, Hammer actually, he says, I feel like I'm back in this tournament after yesterday with a big win as black against Darl Svirts. So good job, Hammer. And now that he's rejuvenated, let's see what kind of campaign he can wage. Okay, let's take a look at the B group. This is still a really strong event, 2,500 level players here in this one. And we see Gabuzian still at the top, 2.5 points. So what do you make of this here, Eric?
I mean, it's nice to see clear leaders in both sections. We have at least 2 players to keep our eyes on. Gabuzian has been playing some pretty fiery chess. No, he had a quick draw yesterday, but it seems like he's in the driver's seat today. And I mean, we might have him in the studio again. He's already been in the studio twice after both wins. So he's always a pleasure to interview, so see what happens.
Very well spoken. And yeah, I mean, he had a draw. Everybody had a draw yesterday in Group B, which is unusual in this event. We've seen so many decisive games, stuff that you don't really see at events like the Sinkfield Cup or London or anything like that. So it's a very exciting tournament we have here. And let's take a look at the format of this event. We know a lot of you are joining us for the first time since it is the weekend, so welcome. This is a 2 10-player round-robin event. We have an A group, we have a B group. The time control for both is 90 minutes for the first 40 moves, plus 30 minutes added on for the remainder of the game after the player hits their 40th move. There is a 30-second increment from move number 1, so that means all the players have to take notation from beginning to end. And very important, there is a 30-move no-draw rule in play, which means that the players cannot agree to a draw before Black's 30th move. And this is so we get some fighting chess on the board. We don't want any of those 7-move grandmaster draws, they call them. It sounds exciting. You don't want a grandmaster draw, though. That's not what the spectators come for. And now the schedule. We are in round number 4 of 9. There are no rest days. And this is an abbreviated commentary schedule. You'll notice that each day the round begins at 1 p.m. and we are on the air 2.5 hours after that at 3:30 p.m. Central Time. The last day, we're starting earlier to make room for playoffs if necessary because there can only be one winner in each field.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Will there be an Armageddon playoff if there are players tied in either group?
There could be. So I believe the protocol here is 2 rapid games, best of 2. And then after that, if it's still tied between the players, then they'll go to an Armageddon. And yes, we will still have playoffs even if there are 3 or 4 people tied for first. It's very unlikely, but it could happen. And in those instances, I don't even know if all the specifics are posted on uschesschamps.com.
Interesting. Okay.
But so I assume that the protocols are there, but this will not be like the Grand Chess Tour where we have to get it down to 2 for a playoff. If there's a bunch of people that need a playoff, we're going to have a playoff between those people. And you can join us all along the way. Of course, you may be watching on YouTube. You could be watching us on Twitch. Be sure to check out the live module at uschesschamps.com, where we have Chess24 embedded there, oh so nice, with the video up in the corner. Analysis, you can turn the engine on or off. It's really up to you. And follow us. Join the conversation all along the way on all platforms with hashtag Fall Chess Classic. We want to hear from you, and yes, we will be monitoring the chats today.
Sure.
So ask your questions, be civil, be thoughtful. We want to hear from you. This is going to be a lot of fun. We are already underway, though, in round number 4, so we're not going to waste too much more time. Let's see what games we have in store for you in Group A. These are the pairings, and we have a couple of games already completed, as you see there. Eric Hansen and Ray Robson have drawn, Alexei Dreyev and Daro Sviritz have drawn, and then the games in progress, Lazaro Brazone versus Yuri Kuzubov, Hammer versus Akobian, and then our key matchup of the day.
That's right, Grandmaster Sathuraman against Grandmaster Lenderman, 2 heavy dogs. Playing in round 4, they both have 2 points out of 3 going into this round, and if either player wins, they can catch up to the leader, Alexei Dreyev. So we'll see how the play is developing so far. Let's take a look at how the game is going. I do want to take a look at the opening because Sathuraman played one of my favorite openings, English opening, which I've played in many tournament games over the recent years. And he played what's called the 4 of Knights variation of the English, and has a more slow reputation, especially after this move pawn d3. And what ended up happening was that both sides just developed within their own territory, and neither player really put immediate pressure on their opponent from early on. We can see both sides kind of minding their own business here, completing development after e3. The first somewhat strange move that we see in this game is knight to g4, allowing the knight to get kicked after pawn h3, and the knight repositions itself on a very seemingly bad square on h6. But if we notice, the point of this move is that rather than being on f6, the knight is now no longer in the way of the f-pawn, and black can very soon gain space with this move pawn f5, and that's exactly what happened after knight d2, pawn f5. It's very common in these sort of closed English positions that black wants to expand on the king side, and maybe later on get some kingside attack, very possible ideas of perhaps pawn g5, pawn f4. I've played this myself as black in many games over the years. Now, one benefit for white in this position is very nice control over the d5 square, and this is one of the kind of key elements of playing the English opening, is that the bishop, the knight, and the pawn control d5, and Sathuraman takes full advantage of this by plopping the knight into d5, and after knight f7, play continues, and it still took a while for fireworks to happen, but after the move pawn f4, we should admire white's just very aesthetic setup with these pawns quite symmetrical, controlling the center from all directions, combined with the double fianchetto. I do like the way Sathuraman is playing here. It just seems like a really nice harmonious setup, and it's kind of the type of position you want your pieces to be on good squares, so that if the position opens up further, you'll be prepared for the tactical possibilities. Let's zoom forward here. Many more moves have been played. Black was fighting for d5, provoking white to move back to c3, and it took a while before anything got traded. You can see all the pieces still on the board, and then finally Sathuraman decides to take on e5 and then go for e4, transforming the structure and perhaps trying to fix this pawn now on e5. And it's very possible that this pawn on e5 will be a long-term weakness, as white has ideas of rook to e1, perhaps someday unleashing the bishop, and white could potentially have multiple attackers against the e5 pawn. A few more moves have been played, actually. Let me update the board to the current position after pawn e4, queen a5. And this is where we see, or we start seeing the fireworks. The queen on a5, perhaps applying a bit of pressure in white's position. White takes on f5, after knight take f5, knight e4, putting the focus in the center, and then Lenderman played a seemingly very risky move here, queen take a2, just going pawn grabbing. Not sure if I would approve of this. I'm sure Yasser Seirawan would approve of this being the ultimate pawn grabber, but this seems very risky. The queen is now out of play. Should note that black is threatening to take on b3. So now
maybe it's not
that's a
so
question.
risky after all. I mean, I'm not seeing how can you make black pay here? I mean, it looks like you can get in and get out with that pawn.
I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, black won a pawn, is threatening to win another pawn. White would really like to play 2 moves in a row here to maybe cheat, sneak the queen on c2, and then play rook a1 to trap the black queen. So maybe... Actually, now I'm realizing if queen c2 right away, there is a very deadly fork with knight to e3. It's forking everything in white's territory. And I doubt that white would be happy here. Not to mention the time situation. So it seems like Lenderman is really putting the question to how his opponent is going to find compensation here, having lost a pawn and being down on time.
Is that the current position right now?
One more move. We see Safar Rahman just played this move, pawn g4. So rather than focusing on targeting the black queen, the focus is now on the king side. I do like this move, trying to kick away the knight, maybe remove it from accessing this e3 square, and if it retreats, then maybe there's this idea of queen c2, or perhaps white will continue with some attacking ideas on the king side. Perhaps someday go for knight fg5 and unleash the battery on the f-file. So it seems like a very complex battle so far.
And if one of these players emerges with a victory today, I mean, we could be looking at a new clear leader in this field.
It's very true.
Okay, so in the meantime, since we've taken a look at our key matchup in A, let's look at our lineup for Group B. And all of the games in Group B right now are still in progress. Sergei Azarov versus Conrad Holt. Chris Yu versus Steven Zerg. Brandon Jacobson versus Elshan Moradiabadi. And Akshat Chandra versus Ashwin Jaram. Our last game is the key matchup.
That's right. Gabuzian in clear first in Group B, playing Denis Borosh, as we've seen, who's playing some nice chess so far. Not an easy player to defeat. Let's take a look at the current position. Lots of pieces have been traded. If we count the pawns, it looks like Denis is down a pawn, if I'm counting correctly, 5 pawns versus 4 pawns.
You're correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've studied math in the past. I can count. I want to go back to a moment several moves ago where it seems like Denis just made a very foolish blunder. If we take a look at this position, it seems roughly equal. I mean, both sides having 5 pawns and a very symmetrical structure. So you may wonder how black ended up losing a pawn here. If we go forward a few moves, I think it just came down to simple tactics. In this position, it seems like Denis just got careless by playing this move bishop to c5. Seems like an innocent improving move, optimizing the bishop, trying to make it more effective, perhaps glaring down at the f2 pawn. However, whenever you move a piece in a chess game, you gain control over some squares and lose control over other squares. In this case, because the bishop is no longer on e7, there's less defense of the knight on f6. And because of this, there's a piece that is overworked in black's position. For viewers who are watching and may not see the next move for white, I would highly encourage you to search for the tactical opportunity that white can play in this position. Ben, do you have any ideas what white can do?
Well, I think I do. That bishop taking h6. How about that?
Yeah, bishop take h6. This g7 pawn doing too many jobs at once. If it were to take the bishop, then the knight is left completely undefended, and that's probably why black is regretting not having the bishop still on e7. And what happened from here after bishop take h6, a very sad move was played bishop to f8. And white just went up a clear pawn. Going forward here, now it's a question, can white actually convert the pawn advantage? I think this is going to take a lot more work to go from being up a pawn to winning, because there's no clear weaknesses in black's territory. it's not easy for white to create a pass pawn. And if white wants to advance the pawns to gain space, then you always have to be careful about weakening the white king. So I'm still expecting a very long fight. We see rooks do get traded here after queen c5, bishop g5. Let's get forward to the current position. Queen d7 played. A few more moves have been played, actually. Bishop to b4, f6, and now f4. And perhaps this is the start of white's expansion on the king side. White has to be a bit careful. This move f4 seems a little bit weakening, but it's also very restrictive. It's preventing this knight from moving to the only legal square on g5. And black's pieces now look incredibly passive, given that this bishop is also stuck. The bishop is pinned to the king and attacked twice by white's queen and white's bishop. So I can't be too happy here if I was Danish. And should mention they're on move 41, so both players having a lot of time. Gubuzian has over an hour on the clock, which we don't see too often. We don't see the players reaching move 40 with so much time to spare. So I'm liking white's chances in this game.
Very nice. You know, there's a lot on the line in this event, and I'd like to take a look at the prize funds for both fields here. First, in Group A, $22,000 total on the line. The first place winner will be walking out with $6 grand. As far as Group B goes, $14,000 total prize fund, and the champion goes home with $4,000. Okay, so let's look at the rest of our games here. We have in Group B, one of the ones that sticks out to me, two players who are really trying to get back into contention. The two players who are in 9th and 10th place, respectively. I'm talking about Chris Yu and Steven Zerg. And it looks, well, the board is very crowded right now, actually.
This position just makes my head hurt. It's hard to stare at this and just not get like a terrible migraine, just pieces just scattered all over the place. Black's king on d7, this bishop on a4, this knight on a7. Seems like black is really lacking coordination. Now, this did come from a French defense. Perhaps we can go back and just take a look at the opening. I was taking a look at this game briefly earlier, and we see the classic winnower variation of the French after bishop to b4 and e5. And in this position, Steven Zerg played a very kind of strange-looking move, queen d7. This is not a move that you see every day, at least so early in the opening. Seems like this is just blocking in black's minor pieces on the queen side. Now, I do want to mention, I believe Zerg played this game earlier in the tournament. I'm not sure who it was against, but I do remember him playing this exact move. And it's very possible that Christopher was prepared in this variation. Seemed like he played quite quickly in the opening, playing queen to g4. And after this attack against the pawn in g7, now we see the purpose of queen d7. Black is able to play f5, simultaneously defending the pawn, discovered defense, and also attacking the queen on g4. After queen to g3, then both sides began doing their own thing, getting their pieces into play. Bishop back to f8 seems somewhat unusual and very sad move. If I were black here, I would perhaps be a bit more inclined to take on c3, but I guess black did not want to concede the bishop pair, especially with white having perhaps good potential with the dark square bishop. So bishop f8 keeps things solid, but black is quite low on space. And going forward, we do see black castled queenside. Going forward even more, Christopher Yu gaining space on the queen side. And because white has not committed the king yet, it seems like white will castle very shortly on the king side. White's main plan here is to attack on the queen side. Whenever there's possibility for opposite side castling, you want to play more aggressively than usual, and that's what we see with this queenside pawn advance. Steven played knight a5 here, and after b take a6, seems like white won a pawn, but then the a pawn is left a bit stranded on a6 after bishop to c6. Very strange to have a pawn so deep into black's territory, but white can't really make use of it given that a7 just runs into king b7. So the pawn stays there for a good while. Knight ef4 played, knight f7, castling kingside. So we finally reached the opposite side castling situation. Let's zoom forward and see how play is currently developing. We see black is expanding on the king side, and after pawn g4, the knight comes into play, knight to g5, perhaps initiating some trade. Now we see this very strange move, knight a7, which I'm trying to comprehend. It does free up the c6 square. Maybe this bishop wants to come back into play. Also, maybe there's ideas of knight to b5, potentially harassing the queen, and also pressuring this pawn on d4. We see the knights do get traded, and after rook fb1, king to b7, this brings us to, actually I think one more move has been played, queen to b2, and this brings us to the current position where I like white. I like the fact that white has more space. Black's king is somewhat dubiously placed just in the center, and it seems like black just doesn't have the best coordination. And it seems very possible that the white will look to open up the center quite soon. The plan that sticks out to me is some idea of rook to c1 and c4. Whenever your opponent's king is in the center and the center is closed, you want to look for ways to open up more lines. In this case, white would love to open up the c-file.
What is the queen's purpose specifically on b2, though? How does that come into play?
I think queen b2 is played to get out of the way of the c-pawn.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not necessarily improving the effectiveness of the queen, but sometimes when your pieces are in the way of each other, you have to clear up squares so things can come into play more harmoniously. And I do like queen c2, like or queen to b2. It can no longer be harassed from where it was on c3, and it seems like white has a very clear plan, while black, it's not so clear what black is trying to do here. Maybe there's some idea of h5, h4, but it seems a little bit slow, and it seems like white's plan is just much quicker in this position.
All right, well, we've seen where we stand now. For the record, I got the players flipped when I was introducing the game. U is actually 10th. Zerg is 9th right now. So, but after this, it could be anybody. I mean, they could. Everybody's so close right now in the standings. You could leapfrog a whole bunch of them.
Now, I do want to mention, Christopher, you kind of escaped from the jaws of defeat yesterday against Sergei Azarov. Seemed like a much worse rook ending, but kept fighting, and he held on for a draw. And I think perhaps that game gave him some momentum in going forward in the tournament. That was his first half point of the event, having lost the first 2 games. So sometimes when you're in that situation where you lose a couple games, you draw a game, then it's time to start thinking about winning some games.
Yes, indeed. I had something I was about to say, but the rumbling threw me off a little bit, Eric. I gotta be honest.
I don't know what they're building upstairs.
Yeah,
Might be a birdhouse.
Sounds serious.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a subway. The train, not the restaurant.
It's possible.
Okay, so another game that has caught my eye. We're staying in Group B right here. I want to look at Akshat versus Ashwin. 2 players very familiar to the St. Louis crowd here.
This is just a complete mess. I'm counting material. That's the one thing I do know how to do. It seems like material is currently equal. Let's go back. I was not looking at this game earlier. Actually, I was. I noticed Ashwin played very rare opening, actually, for high-level chess. The Alekhine's defense. This is not something you see every day in modern high-level play. This is the type of thing you would see maybe 100 years ago when Alekhine was still around. The idea of this opening is to provoke white to overextend and then later counterpunch in the center. And I do like the opening choice by Ashwin simply because Akshat has some issues with time management. And
as we see his
as we see, he's currently below a minute. So I don't want to take too long analyzing this line, but I do want to make a note that it seemed like black just had a very simple setup. This is the type of thing that you'll see very often in the Scandinavian after bishop to f5. Black just has simple ways to complete development. And it seemed like Akshat took a lot of time early on and perhaps is not saving himself for enough time in the current moment. Going forward here, simple play by black. White does have a little less space. And this is one of the reasons why the Alekhine is not so popular on the high level. It does concede space, but it is perhaps offbeat enough that it can make the player or the opponent think. Let's zoom forward, because both players kind of doing their own thing. White does get the bishop pair to queen b3, attacking the pawn on b7. Black defends with queen c7, rook fd1, and the first pawn break of the game, pawn to e5, trying to make the minor pieces come to life, especially this bishop on d6 and the knight on d7. Would love to perhaps land on e5 if pawn take e5, knight take e5. Black can perhaps breathe a bit easier. But after c5, Akshat played a counterattacking move. After e5, Akshat played the counterattacking move.
We see in the live shot the game is over.
Whoa.
I think Akshat has lost.
Okay, let's go forward and try and figure out what's happening.
Yes, indeed. Ashwin Jaram has the victory as black. How did this happen?
Knight to b5. Did he lose on time? Can we get a close-up of the clock?
I mean, it's 30-second increment. That'd just be very unfortunate to lose on time.
Queen a5. Wait a minute, we do have more moves. Whoa. Okay, the final position features a fork where it seems like black is winning material. How did we get there? So let's get to this position, still equal material.
Right.
And then...
We can rule out, first of all, it's not a time loss. There's still time on the clock. But yes, the fork.
So, first of all, I'm a bit curious. This knight on e5 is hanging, but if white were to capture it, were there any tactics that I'm overlooking here? Maybe there's the idea of rook to d8, rook a d8, where this queen is tied down to defending both the knight and the bishop on e5, and perhaps this is what was a bit scary for the white side. So it seemed like Akshat tried to be a bit fancy with this move knight to b5, removing the knight as a target, and perhaps hoping that after pawn take b5, bishop take e5, this would be a trade, and white would be perhaps doing well here. But Ashwin played a somewhat invisible move. This is a type of move that is very easy to overlook, but very aesthetic in the tactical nature. Queen take b5. This leaves the queen attacked by the bishop, but after bishop take b5, knight f3 check, black wins the queen right back, and Akshat just resigned in this position, realizing that after the dust settles, king g2, knight take d4, black is just up a piece. If rook take d4, the bishop hangs in the end, and just an extra knight for black. So I would bet that Akshat just missed queen take b5. Very unfortunate blunder, but I mean, that's what happens when you're so low on time. It's easy to miss these perhaps more hard to see moves.
And now the Indian player Ashwin Jaram has catapulted himself to, sharing the top spot with 2.5 points along with Gabuzian. I'd love to talk to Ashwin if we can get him down here.
I would love to talk to Ashwin too. We might have to fight over who can.
I'll let you have it.
Okay.
You could probably analyze a little bit better than me.
All right, fair enough.
No, one of the real nice guys of the chess world. Great interview as well. So that's our first decisive game of the day in either field. And what else shall we look at? The games in Group A, I'm just glancing at the eval. They look very even so far. Is there anything you wanted to go over, Eric, first?
Yeah, there's a game that catches my eye in Group B. Very imbalanced position. The battle between Sergei Azarov and Conrad Holt. I'm just trying to make sense of the situation. Let's go back just a few moves and see what is going on. Again, whenever I'm switching to a new position and just trying to let the valuation sink in, I'm always starting by counting material. In this case, white is up 2 pawns, but the king is very exposed, and black has 2 bishops in a very open position. There's pressure along the f-file. There's this attack against this rook on c1. So as play developed, white played rook to d1, Black kept the initiative with queen g5 check, and it seems like Black is the one who's dictating play despite being down material after king to h1, bishop h3, threatening classic queen g2 checkmate. I think White has only one reasonable move here to play rook to g1, and then after queen f6, still seems like Black is keeping pressure, rook to g3, but maybe White is consolidating. The bishop is forced back to c8. This seems like a very passive move, but I believe the idea is to simply reposition the bishop along this very nice long diagonal to target one of the greatest weaknesses in this position, is pawn in f3. And then after queen to e4, one more move has been played, bishop to b6. And this is the current position, but it seems like within the last few moves, White has been able to keep everything defended, and now is perhaps looking to expand. I do like White's chances here, and there's a potential mating idea which is sticking out to me. I'm not sure how it could potentially work. Let's just play a really bad move for Black in this position.
I'll give you some time here, Eric,
yeah?
because we've got Ashwin Jayaram. He's about to come in for an interview. But
Okay.
yes, let's continue looking at it in the interim.
Okay. I wanted to mention that White would really like to play a move like knight g6, provoking h takes g6, and then somehow check along the h-file. And if White could check along the h-file, this would be checkmate, given that Black is not able to move to g8 due to the bishop on c4. The problem here is that a move like queen h4 or rook h3 are not playable due to the fact that Black is covering h4 with the queen and covering h3 with the bishop. So if Black were to either remove the queen or the bishop from covering these two squares, there is this knight g6 possibility. Now the question is, what does White do in this position to try and make progress, given that there's probably no immediate tactics, and it seems like White might still have to work to build up some attack. One candidate move that pops out right away is a move like bishop to d3, just a simple mate in one threat, attempting to just capture the pawn on h7. And sometimes moves like this you want to consider. These are forcing moves where you have very direct threats. However, Black might be able to respond in this case with a move like bishop f5, not only defending, but counterattacking. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sergey takes his time in this position. He still has 16 minutes left for about 9 more moves until move 40. So we'll have to keep an eye on this game, but I do want to welcome a special guest in the studio.
Hello.
Grandmaster Ashwin Jayaram. After winning, is this your first win of the tournament?
No, second.
Second win of the tournament. Congratulations.
In the first round.
That's right.
Opponent game.
That's right. Yeah, we didn't get the chance to talk to you then,
Right.
but it's good to have you here now. Seemed like a pretty quick victory today. Yeah. Now I do want to ask you, because I mentioned earlier in the event, you're working. You have a full-time job.
Yeah, I mean, not today, because today's a Saturday.
So
but
today's a weekend. Yeah. So did that play in your favor? Were you able to sleep in and maybe conserve some energy?
So, yeah, I was very rested, so I guess that helped, too.
Very nice. And will you be working in the morning for the rounds starting Monday?
Yeah.
Every day?
Yeah, so I'll have a morning shift, and then they were nice enough to let me play, which I'm really grateful for. Mm-hmm. And so, obviously, I have to make up for it later on overtime, but it's fun to play whenever I can.
Sure. Well, we're good to have, or very glad to have you here. Mm-hmm. Take us through the game. It seemed like you were perhaps a bit inspired by the late Alekhine to play some offbeat opening.
Yeah, I mean, I've been meaning to play the Alekhine for a while because I analyzed it briefly, and it never seemed like White had anything major. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, I don't really have enough time to do that deep opening preparation, so I'm always looking for these lines where it's not so bad, but it's very playable. And the Alekhine is probably, one of the best openings for that kind of chess.
And was this specific preparation for Akshat? I was speculating that maybe it was a good choice against him because he takes his time when in somewhat offbeat positions.
I've been meaning to play it for a while, and this seemed like the perfect occasion to try it because Akshat's a very well prepared he's very well prepared in the openings. And I've been mainly playing the Caracan these days, and I figured if I play the Caracan, then I'd probably face a lot of preparation, and I just wanted to sleep in. I don't want to study that much.
Yeah, sometimes sleep is more important
Yeah.
than heavy preparation.
Mm-hmm.
So, in preparing for the Alekhine, did you prepare like specific main lines, or were you just trying to get a feel of the middle game structure?
I mean, so in preparing, I saw he had one game against the Alekhine where he played this this modern d4 knight f3, and so I mean, I'd analyzed this c6 bishop f5, and I mean, I knew it was I know there are a lot of grandmaster games here, so I was pretty sure that even if I got a slight, even if White got some slight advantage, it wasn't too bad. It was solid enough.
And it seemed like that's what happened. I mean, White just had some nice space advantage.
Yeah, I mean, so I think all this has been played before, and it's a rather typical structure. Well, Black is solid, White has a bishop here in space, but Black has some counterplay with e5. And so I guess for me, what really worked is that apparently this really surprised him, because even for I think like if you look at the move knight f3 that's been played several hundred times, and he probably took about half an hour to make that move.
Knight f3 on move.
No, not that knight
no.
f3. On move 8.
Knight back to
this
f3.
this knight back to f3. This has been played several times, and probably I think a few hundred games. And this, I think it probably took him about half an hour to make this move. So.
Yeah, that's too much time to
Yeah,
spend on
it's
move
way
8,
too much.
especially in
I
a
think-
somewhat quiet position.
I think perhaps he was really calculating f4, g4 options, which are interesting. I think they're not. They deserve to be played way more, but I think he was probably calculating those.
Probably not the type of thing you want to play without prior preparation, though.
I mean, I'd looked at it briefly, but not. I mean, I know that I'm not losing here, so that's good enough for me.
So what was the turning point in this game? Because it seemed like, okay, you were maybe slightly worse, but then was it just time trouble for him?
I think it was a combination of things. So there was this moment where I played e5, and it looks. I haven't checked the computer yet, but this looks very risky because of c5, bishop c4. Right, so I think he also thought this was probably a mistake, but after bishop e7, I think he realized that c5 is a little bit of a. I mean, he attacks f7, I defended, and then this, c5 is still hanging for some time, and so he's a little bit overextended, and I'm still solid. I have everything to play for, so I I still think it's probably equal, but I mean, he probably thought he had much more than he actually did. So then later on, let's see, d takes e5, knight takes e5. So now all my counterplay is designed around trying to exploit the c5 pawn. So I think queen c4, bishop f8. Now I'm threatening this nice rook takes e3, bishop takes e5, and
just a nice exchange
yeah,
sacrifice.
I'm pretty sure this is better for me because his entire king side looks weak, and e3 also looks weak. Maybe not better, but I'm definitely the one.
I mean, that would be a good situation to be
Yeah.
in when he's so low on time.
It's definitely more fun.
Right.
So yeah, I've been trying to get some counterplay with c5, and so then now I found this really interesting tactic for knight e5, queen d4, takes queen a5, and I get this nice bishop takes c5, rook takes e5 stuff. And I think this surprised him, and
So after bishop take e5, you would play bishop takes c5.
yeah.
Aha. I was trying to comprehend what's going on here. I was thinking maybe rook a d8, but bishop takes c5.
Yeah. So now
looks nicer.
Here he has two options. One, he can play. I mean, there's one option that's a little bit funny, but so if he takes bishop takes f6, then I can take on d4 and play c5. It's funny that pawn wins the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. The position is just too delicate for White. Like the bishop defends knight, defends the other
Yeah, I
bishop.
mean, if that pawn was in b7, Black is absolutely. White is probably just much better. But I get this nice c5 move.
Yeah, that's a nice thing to see at the end of the variation, which
Yeah.
maybe he wouldn't necessarily see quickly enough given the time situation.
But so, I mean, apart from this, he had two other options. Bishop c7 was one. And I'd take on d4. He takes on a5. Then I take on c3, and then I take on e2. Now maybe he can take on f6, go for this rook endgame. And this, I mean, I'm pretty sure it looks very drawish, but I have more time. I'm pushing,
I mean, you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah, for sure. And so the other option is, instead of bishop c7, queen a4. So then I take on a4. Knight takes a4, rook takes e5. Bishop f3. Rook c8. Now, I think if he wants to, he could win back the c6 pawn with rook c1.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for rook c1, I can probably just go bishop a3. And if he takes on c6, then I takes and play rook e2.
Take on c6, rook
take on
e2.
c6,
Yeah,
rook
seems
e2. And
seems nice for black.
Yeah, I mean, I'm attacking a2. If he moves his a4 knight, I get bishop c5. I mean, I think I'm still better over here.
Yeah, it looks very pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all of these variations, were you calculating on his time, like when he's thinking?
No, I think this I calculated on my time. I think I already sort of saw this queen a5 idea a few moves ago. It was not a fully formed idea yet. So when he played this queen, what was it, queen d4? Yeah, when he played queen d4, it was here I was thinking for a long time. Because I was also considering playing pawn takes c5, pawn takes c5, rook a d8.
Sure, which looks very natural.
Yeah, and at first it looks like it's losing material because of bishop takes e5, but I have queen takes e5 and rook takes d1 check, and so I'm not losing any material.
Mm-hmm.
But here, I mean, I don't know if this is a great idea or not, but queen e3, I wasn't entirely sure what to do.
It seems like you took the right approach in the game,
Yeah.
going for queen a5.
Yeah, I figured
really
queen
worked
a5
out.
at the very least have a better endgame.
Right. Now, when you played queen a5, did you consider knight b5 or
really
reject it
didn't.
immediately?
So it was actually quite lucky that it's losing, because I barely considered knight b5.
How long did it take for you to find queen take b5?
I mean, as soon as he played it, I saw that it wasn't working.
Nice.
So. I mean, for a while, I'd been looking at this motif of knight f3 check.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was sort of in the back of my mind, and then when he played knight b5, first I was surprised, and then I was like, wait, I can just go over here. And I was a little bit, I thought, okay, maybe he might have something with bishop takes c6 and get some, two minor pieces, but it's, again, my position is lucky enough that knight takes d4 protects c6.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, things worked out.
Oh, nice finish. This brings you to, what's your current score?
2.5.
2.5 out of 4, so plus score. Still many games to go. Any weekend plans now that you're not working this weekend? Is it mostly eat, sleep, chess, or anything else?
Yeah, probably just more sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you get back to sleep.
Yeah, sure.
And we are going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with more coverage from the 2018 Fall Chess Classic.
Question on Twitter from Damas. I should not have pronounced that. That was a bit of a trap, yeah?
For those of you who are new to chess, it might look like ba3 is an illegal move here because white advances pawn 2 squares, not 1. But it's a little something we call en passant. And you can do that, but you have to do it instantly. You can't wait for a move, like let's say play king e7, king g2, and now try, because I couldn't do it.
I'm sorry. This is too funny for words.
This is a software glitch? I'm pretty sure there's not a lot.
Lawrence. Hello, Lawrence. Yeah, I'll play 4 against Lawrence. And now he's going to play something against me which we discussed at length during the course of my stay. Yeah, he told me this is excellent. d5, this was what I was kind of hoping for, because now I think e5 is quite strong. No, Lawrence, this is not how chess works. Sadly, it would be much, much more fun if chess actually worked like this. But I don't think it does. Or maybe it does. Well, that's me regretting what I just said. How did I get from there to here is a little bit beyond me. And what's worse, I will never hear the end of it. My quality of life has just gone downhill tremendously because I'm actually sharing the office with the guy.
Welcome to the chess capital of the United States. The St. Louis Chess Campus, in the heart of the vibrant Central West End, has established itself as a premier global destination for chess and is comprised of 2 unique nonprofit institutions. The Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis is recognized as the top chess facility in the world and plays host to all major tournaments, including the U.S. Chess Championships and the Sinkfield Cup, one of the strongest chess tournaments globally. Tournaments are broadcast online to more than 150 countries, led by an expert commentary team of grandmasters. The Chess Club is an educational organization committed to promoting the game of chess, with a specific focus on bringing the benefits of chess to children throughout the St. Louis area. Research shows children who play chess exhibit improved analytical skills and increased confidence. The Chess Club is highly engaged with the local community, bringing scholastic chess programs to more than 100 schools, providing hundreds of classes each week. Directly across the street from the Chess Club is the World Chess Hall of Fame. This one-of-a-kind cultural institution invites visitors to experience chess in imaginative ways and is home to the U.S. and World Chess Halls of Fame. Cutting-edge exhibitions feature rare, historic chess artifacts paired with world-class art. Innovative programming explores the intersection of chess, art, and culture. Visitors can enjoy interactive programs designed around the exhibitions and monthly music in the galleries. The World Chess Hall of Fame is nothing you expect and everything you love. 3 different galleries and a premier gift shop highlight the culture, history, and creativity behind the game. Come visit, play chess, leave enriched. To learn more about the St. Louis Chess Campus, visit stlchesscampus.org.
Welcome back, everyone, to the studio at the 2018 Fall Chess Classic. I'm International Master Eric Rosen, and we have another special guest in the studio, Grandmaster Borusian Jacobian, after drawing his game against Grandmaster Hammer. How are you doing, Var?
Hi, Eric. Hi, everyone. It's going okay. I mean, I have 2 out of 4, so I have 3 decent games, 1 win, 2 draws, and 1 really bad game. I'm pretty ashamed of that loss. I mean, I just, for some reason, decided to experiment with Scandinavian and just backfired pretty badly here. So it was a terrible loss for me.
So yeah, how do you end up like regrouping after a game like that? Do you try and just forget about it and move on, or do you change anything in your playing style?
Yeah, I just wanted to have a little fun and try this opening. And the only reason I played it because my opponent had 0-2 result against this opening, so he lost 2 games. And I thought, might bring some memories back, but looks like he just prepared, after those losses, he looked it up and he was just quite ready. He played the best moves, and I basically played 1 really bad move in that game. I played Long Castle, but kind of casually. If it's a blitz or rapid game, you might get by, but long game, I just played 1 bad move, and I couldn't get back at the game after this. It was just like 1 really bad move.
It's tough.
Yeah, then I just had a good game yesterday against Rosen. I won with white. I had a good preparation. I played a Fabiano line against Nimzo with 4G3.
We saw that, yeah, brought up Fabiano. So
played that and won that. It was a good game. And today was just, I think, a pretty decent game against Hammer. I was black and played pretty accurately.
Yeah, it seemed like a very solid game. Nothing too eventful.
I think the critical moment is maybe before the move. Well, let's go forward maybe, because most of it's theory until we deviate from one of his games. Today I had a very brief preparation because Grandmaster Hammer plays, e4, d4, c4, knight f3. So
it's hard to prepare for
I wasn't just
like
going to spend 3 hours preparing. So I just, I expected some e4, and I said, okay, if he plays d4, maybe I'll just play something solid. So he actually had a game against Simon Agenstein with the same line last year. And so this is pretty popular. Bishop b4, knight d2, knight c6. Anand has played many games. Hikaru Nakamura.
I was going to say seems like a very topical line these days for black equalize.
There are some important ideas here. So after he castles, the bishop has nothing to do already on b4. So we just go back bishop e7, a3, bishop f6. Okay, rook c1 maybe is another move here because bishop b2. There's bishop h7 tactic. King takes h7, queen c2 check, winning the bishop. But rook b1 he played, and here I played rook e8. I think this is a pretty accurate move here because it's not so clear what white is going to do now because I want to play knight e5. So he played knight f3, which allows bishop g4. But let's say he tries to play a prophylactic move first with h3, then I think knight e5 simply equalizes, because now if the bishop goes to e2, I have bishop f5 with the tempo hitting the rook on b1, and if the bishop goes on c2, it just looks pretty awkward. I might be able to even play knight c4 here.
Yeah, it seems
And black is very
already
active
pleasant
here.
for black.
Yeah, maybe black, maybe not better, but very comfortable.
Was
So-
this all part of some like opening preparation, or
To be honest, I didn't prepare too much. I just saw that he had a game, and he told me his opponent played g6 here instead of rook e8, Grandmaster Agenstein, and he thought white is better there. So I think the next few moves are pretty forced. So bishop g4, h3, bishop h5. Okay, now what to do if it doesn't play g4? It's very difficult to find a useful move here, because I'm very active. My bishops are very active on f6, on h5. Bishop e2, I even have bishop g6. So he played g4. I think this is forced. Bishop g6 takes. And queen d3. Okay, critical moment in the game, because if I give him a couple of moves, he plays rook f d1, king g2, maybe white is a little bit better. So here I realize I have to play very concrete here. So just g5 I think is a strong move, attacking the bishop, forcing him to g3, and the next move is d4.
yeah, this is a nice
Yeah.
move, very typical.
Yeah,
when you
because
have the
trying
Ice
to
Queen's
equalize,
pawn.
yes. And now if he takes knight d4, just equalizes immediately. So, yeah, and just queen takes d4, bishop d4. So I had to play e4. And now actually another accurate move, in my opinion, because if I play bishop e5 right away, my rook on e5, it's not ideally placed. And in this line after we exchange everything. So that's why I insert,
So can you explain why the rook isn't
because
that great
they
here?
cannot go too many squares on e5, and he will play, let's say, rook fe1. I think it's very close to equality, but maybe he's tiny bit better there. But I got a better version of this position, because I played queen e7, very strong move, attacking the pawn on e4. So essentially forcing rook fe1, and now bishop e5, because e5 is coming now, and now bishop e5 just forces the liquidation here. So I think he has to take, otherwise he could be worse. So we trade everything. And okay, here he had an option maybe to play rook bd1, keep all the rooks. But again, black is, I think, absolutely fine here.
It's rook a d8. And
I was going to play rook
No.
e8 actually, so I can put the other rook to c8. So I think I'm at least equal here. So he played rook ac1. I play rook ac8. Now we trade one pair of rooks, rook d1. I can't play rook e8 here. That would be an inaccuracy, because he will take on d4. Queen e4 takes on e4, rook e4, and now he inserts rook d8 check. And then rook
with
d7, then I'm
d7,
down
yeah.
a pawn in endgame. So, of course, I'm not going to allow this. So I played rook d8, and I'm absolutely fine here. I thought we're just going to probably repeat with rook d2, rook d1. I didn't see too many things for him or for me either. But he decided, okay, maybe this a6 wasn't the best. Maybe I should have just played king g7, because this allowed the c5 square. But I think nevertheless it's just completely fine for me. I didn't see too many winning to play for a win. I mean, I can only play for a win if I can somehow force him to play f3. But he's never going to do that, because then the king will be weak. I cannot force him, because every time I move my rook, he will take on d4.
how would you take advantage if he does play f3 here?
If he plays f3, it's nothing concrete, nothing concrete here. But I will try to, it's probably still very close to a draw. But maybe at some point try to get the rook to the c file. I'm not sure how it will work. Like let's say I'll put the king on h7, just give you an idea. And at some point I'll play queen f4. And when the rook is already gone from d2 to d1, I play rook c8. So yeah, and let's say
Be able to infiltrate somehow.
exactly. So something like this.
Yeah. I guess f3 is very weakening to g3.
Yeah.
Which
So, but that's
could be
why
useful.
f3 would be very. I was hoping for it, but he's not going to do it. I mean, otherwise I get the winning chances. So then we played rook, and this is just forced. We get to this position. Okay, I probably can also make a draw, rook g5. I was trying to make f5 work, because I thought he played a bit risky, because if the rook gets trapped there, but this d pawn is going to queen very quick. But I can't. He has g takes f5, and very quickly he takes on g6 and rook d6. He's in time to get there. Otherwise, my d pawn is very quick. Actually, it's going down, and the king on g2 is cut off. So I thought it was a bit risky for him to go for this, but actually it works out fine for him. So I go king f6, rook d5, king e6, rook d8, king e7. And now if he plays, let's say, rook b7, this is already asking, rook b8, sorry. This is already asking for trouble. d3, now take king e6. I'm not sure if I'm playing for a win here, but at least he has to...
I mean, this pass pawn is scary.
He has to find...
well,
maybe this is just winning, actually. No, this is just wins, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, because rook d4 is
maybe
coming,
rook
right?
b8. Maybe rook b8, rook d4. Okay, this is probably very dangerous. Yeah, rook e8, king d5. Yeah, I think... yeah, rook e1, d2, king c4. I mean, this is just...
I mean, is there a situation where White could trade the rooks and play king f4?
Not in this position, because I go king c3 quickly.
King c3 is winning.
Yeah, I'm just in time to do that. Yeah, so I think he can only lose here. So he played... So we end up repeating. I mean, there was an interesting idea. He could have played king f3 here after rook is on d8. But here I have f5, very strong. And now let's say he takes, and I mean, if he goes rook b8 again, I have this move. Maybe you can try this. Maybe it's a draw still, this line actually here.
Rook b8,
so rook
d3.
b8, d3, rook b7, king e6, rook b8, king e7 probably. I don't know if I'm winning after rook. Maybe rook d4 is just winning still.
Looks attractive.
Yeah, so rook e8, king d5. Okay, so he has some king e3 move. Yeah, I have to be maybe careful a little bit here. Maybe, yeah, I'm just taking too much risk here, playing for a win.
Yeah, sometimes you don't want to.
So yeah, I probably just go back. So rook b8, I just go back. d3, rook b7, king e6, rook b8, I just go king e7. And I think he has
king e7.
King e7, he has to get perpetual, otherwise. Let's say in that line, if he plays rook g8, he loses to d2, rook g1, and rook e1.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just
it seemed like a quiet, kind of peaceful game.
Yeah, it's a normal game. I thought I played fine and neutralized with the black pieces.
Now, do you know who you're playing tomorrow?
I'm playing Alexei Driev tomorrow.
Who's doing very well in the tournament.
Very well, yeah.
Any thoughts in that game?
He's playing quite well. I will just prepare a little bit today, and I think most important is to be fresh.
Sure.
I mean, every game is going to be tough, but he's playing quite well so far. I mean, he's got 2 wins and 2 draws, so...
Now, when the pairings went up well before the tournament started, did you perhaps do preparation for each opponent, or are you doing preparation day by day? I'm
doing day by day because my schedule was quite busy. I had a lot of things I was doing before the tournament, so I didn't have too much time to just prepare. And plus, once again, you don't want to just over-prepare too much because these people can surprise you, and you never know what's going to happen here. I will just go a little bit of preparation, just more try to stay fresh and just play chess.
Sure. Well, I'll let you go. Go prepare, get some rest, and best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
And now we are going to take a look at the remaining games still going. There are a number of games still going on, it seems like, in both groups. Scrolling through here, trying to figure out which game is the most exciting. Perhaps we can go back to the Sergei Azarov-Konrad Holt game, because queens have been traded, and seems like White has maintained the pawn advantage. Let's go back to where queens were still on the board. Oh, wow. After bishop to b6, this is where we last saw the position. When I was looking at it, I was trying to make ideas of knight to g6 work, but we see that White went for a very surprising move, rook to g6. And I don't believe the rook can be taken, because if h take g6, knight take g6, king h7 would be forced, and then the rook hangs on f8 with check. So queen f5 was played, and then after queens are traded, seems like White is just having a better endgame. Nice little discover check here, knight d6, king h8, rook g5, and after g6, knight take f5. Now there is some hope for black with the opposite color bishop situation, but I would still have to put my money on Azarov to come out victorious in this game. Now I do want to welcome back Ben Simon in the studio. good to have you back after a couple long interviews.
Yeah, very exciting stuff, and it's good to finally hear from VAR, even though today it was a draw. You know, he's really not taken off, skyrocketed like he does sometimes, but there's still a lot more left to play. So it's always good to hear from VAR, though.
And he does have a pretty big online following, too. Very notable lecturer for the St. Louis Chess Club YouTube channel. I know you've recorded many of his lectures, and aren't there a few videos with over 1 million views?
Look, I've lost track of how many VAR lectures I've recorded, but I know that VAR has the most viewed single video on our YouTube channel. It's and because it has just a phenomenal title. It's for beginners. It's a beginner in chess video, and 90% of chess players out there are beginners, right? So
especially the YouTube community.
Yeah. So it's a great video, and there's so much more to check out on this YouTube channel, assuming you're watching on YouTube or on uschesschamps.com. So there is one game that we have not looked at all, Eric. I believe. Well, at least one game.
You're going to make me guess what that is?
Well, in Group B, actually, I'm
Group
talking
B.
about Jacobson versus Mora Diabate. I don't think we've glanced at that yet.
Let's go and take a look. Brandon Jacobson, one of the youngest players in Group B, one of the only non-GMs in Group B, but having a very good tournament so far. And it looks like he's putting some pressure against his pretty formidable opponent, Alshon Mora Diabate. Black seems quite passive here. King on g7, the rook's not so active, the knight completely out of play. And seems like white is attempting to make progress on the king side to advance this outside passed pawn on the h-file. The last move that was played is king to g5. Seems like h6 is a very clear threat. Now, the one thing I would be a little concerned about if I were white in this position is this rook on b4. I did mention that the knight is out of play, but the knight is out of play because it's preventing the rook on b4 from getting back in play. The rook cannot access any of these three squares. All of them are covered by black. So it is a question, can white make progress without using this rook, which is stuck on the queen side? I do like white's chances still to play h6 and then perhaps, when the time is right, maybe play rook e2 and king f6 and just keep gaining space. And this h-pawn will be very close to queening. So both players have a lot of time here. They're on move 45. And this could be a very long fight.
Indeed, interesting to see. I'm curious about that rook on b4. I mean, do you ever see a future where that rook is not trapped or entombed in that area anymore?
Well, the issue for black is that even though the rook has no moves, there's no way to immediately trap it. Like, black cannot attack the rook while keeping all the squares around the rook controlled. If a move like knight c6 were to be played, then the rook can escape via b3 and then whittle the way around the pawns and come back into play.
Well, what if white didn't want to wait for that? What if you took the f rook down to the first rank and then moved it over to a1 to try to remove that knight?
It's actually a really interesting idea. I was having all the focus on the king side, but that's a good point that this is a potential resource in the position. And if the rook does come to a1, the knight is forced to retreat to one of these squares. a6 could be weak, and then the rook can perhaps come back to the a-file. It's a very nice idea. I think the question is, can white afford to spend the time to play rook f1, rook a1, or does white want to use the time first to play h6 and go for kingside play? But yeah, now that you mention it, I do like this idea of rook f1. We'll have to see if he decides to play it.
There are games in Group A. Yuri Kuzabov as black against Lazaro Berzon. We haven't glanced at that one yet. I think we should probably do that. There's a lot of action going on at c-file. Any captures coming up? What's going on here?
So let's go back a few moves and see how play developed. Seems like white was the one looking for this queenside expansion. Pawn c5. Now this is kind of a late middle game, approaching the end game, where white is now already wanting to create a passed pawn, to have something to play for in the position. And for the next several moves, we see this pawn just stays on c5, and there's a lot of tension between these two pawns. Black cannot take right away because there's a pin along the b file. So after bishop to d5, knight e4, bishop take e4, rook take e4, queen f6. I like the way white is playing in this position. Queen a3 not only supports the pawn, but also attacks this a7 pawn, prompted black to play this move, rook to c7, and then rook to b1, applying more pressure on b6. Knight e7 is played. And if I'm not mistaken, this looks like a pawn sacrifice by black. Seems like white might be able to get away with taking the pawn twice on b6. But maybe this isn't what white wanted to go for, because now white doesn't have this potential for this very far advanced pawn, and then white is left with pretty glaring weakness on d4. Black would have just a number of ways to build up pressure with both rooks coming to the d file combined with knight f5. So it's very possible that black will win back the pawn quite soon. So instead, white played this move, rook back to c1, to rook d8, rook c4, knight d5. Very nice outpost square for the knight. Not easy for white to remove. After queen b3, now we finally see a capture between the pawns after b takes c5, d takes c5, and rook dc8. And it seems like that black just has overwhelming pressure against the c-pawn. Seems like white may have overextended and now is regretting the fact that, okay, black has very strong battery on the c-file. And it's not so easy for white to defend the pawn effectively, given that black has queen e7 coming. A move that white would like to play here is something like queen a3, but then after queen e7, the pawn is now attacked 3 times and pinned to the queen. So we do have several more moves that have been played. I do want to update the board here. Looks like black has managed to win the pawn. Going back to after rook c8, yeah, white played kind of a sad move. Rook e1, just retreating, had to say goodbye to the pawn, and black goes up a pawn. Queen d4 check, a nice kind of in-between move, provoking king h1, and then queen takes e5, keeping a battery on the c-file. White plays h3, and then queen f2, and one more move has been played, rook to b1. This brings us to the current position. I think this is one of the few games that has still not reached move 40. They're on move 36. Both players have just over a minute. So we might see some time scramble action. Always something to look forward to.
So you would give an advantage here to Kuzubov?
A huge advantage to Kuzubov, having extra pawn, very stable position. Pretty much everything is solid and defended. And now black is looking to create some attack. Looks like queen b7 has been played. Actually, wait, no, it's black's move. Oh, black played g6, creating some more luft for the king, and then queen to b7. Still 3 more moves to make until time control. Time is ticking for Kuzubov. It is a question how to actually break through on the king side. I mean, the structure does not seem so appealing for black. Pretty much, or for white, I should say. Pretty much everything on light squares really weakens the dark squares. And I'm sure black would be dreaming of somehow getting the knight to be more effective in attacking the king side. But for the time being, the rook is attacked on c8. And the first move that jumps out here is a move rook to c2, which we might see. Oh, we see rook to c7. More solid move, just gaining tempo on the queen. I mean, this is a position which maybe black doesn't have to be in too much rush. Now that everything's defended, like the pawn defends the knight, defends the queen, or defends the rook, which defends the pawn, and attacks the queen. So it's some nice coordination for black. And because they're so low on time, I think the strategy might be just to reach time control and then get a position where you have enough time to figure out how to actually win the game.
Very nice. And the real last game we haven't looked at, I don't think we've looked at Setherman and Linderman. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, this is the key matchup of the day.
Of course,
for
so we looked
Group
at it very
A.
first, yes.
We did check it out. It was very kind of quiet, peaceful opening. There are some fireworks taking place, and they have just reached move 40, so there is time added for both players. I am counting the material here, and I see that Lenderman is up a pawn. 4 pawns against 5 pawns. However, when you're up a pawn, your opponent has less pawns. It means your opponent has more open files. In this case, white has the open F file, the half open E file, the half open G file, and perhaps white can use this to perhaps get some counterplay, given that there's some juicy targets, especially along the F file. Right now in the position, this bishop is pinned to the queen. The last move by black was actually queen F6, so is black walking into a pin? And I'd be curious now for white if there's any immediate way to exploit this, but it does seem like the bishop is very well defended on F5, given that it's supported by the pawn, and there's no way for white to effectively remove this bishop immediately. I do want to go back to the Bruzone-Kuzubov game, because some moves have been played,
Sure.
and it seems like they're on the verge of reaching time control. Black has brought the rook back to, or into white's territory after king to g7, queen d6. Finally, we see rook c2. This is a very powerful combination, especially towards the end of the game, when you have 2 major pieces on your opponent's second rank. I know I've talked about this in many days this previous week, but when it's a combination of rook plus queen, it's a very powerful mating combination. And after white plays a4, one more move has been played by black, rook to d2, and this is move 40. Time has been added, and okay, the rook on d2 not only helping pressure the second rank, but now also aligned with the white queen, and it seems pretty dire for white. I mean, it seems like white's only hope is to try and get counterplay against the black king.
It looks like Bruzone played a5.
Is there a pawn on a5? Pawn a5. That's a random move. I would think that white would want to remove the queen, maybe go for something like queen e5 check.
Right.
Seems very random. I mean, I was thinking queen e5 check. If the king moves to h7, I would really like to get the rook down to b8. The problem is the rook is tied down to defending the bishop. So maybe white is realizing here that things are just kind of stuck. I think the rook is tied down, can't really get into play. The queen only has 1 check on e5. Then after king h7, the king is very safe, and there's no way for white to infiltrate. So perhaps a5 is just a waiting move. It's just posing the question to black, how is black actually going to crash through in this position and convert the attack? One thing to point out here is that if knight comes to e3, which seems like kind of the final straw in an attempt to break white's position here, then the knight is less in position to cover the black king side, and after queen e5 check, king h7, this knight is no longer defending the f6 square. And white might get some counterplay here with a move like queen f6, given that, okay, now there's a threat against f7, and while black's attack looks crushing, it's not immediately forcing. Black would love to take on f1 or g2, but these moves are in checks, and that would give white to capture on f7 with check. So I'm curious here how black will actually make progress and attempt to crash through.
What would happen if you go back here a couple moves and say the queen popped into f6, where you were just analyzing?
Oh, so going forward, if let's imagine knight e3, queen e5, king h7, queen f6.
Okay. Oh.
The problem is white's threatening mate in 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Queen
So
take,
I was,
and then rook b8 mates.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, king g8. Yeah.
And
no,
king
no,
g8, this is still force
catastrophic.
mates.
Yeah. That's
So I
the
think
worst.
black would be like, if this position occurred, black would have to move rook d7, which is perhaps still playable. And then maybe there's some idea for black of playing knight f5, knight g3. I think it might come down to how black will ultimately improve the knight. I mean, it's a very stable piece in this position, but I feel like in order to win the game, the knight has to help in some way in attacking the king side. And it's just a question what the right maneuver is. There's another idea here, perhaps to play g5 and knight to f4, where the knight can simultaneously attack and help defend. So I'm sure black is going to be taking his time to consider these possibilities.
Still no new results in yet. In Group B, we have 3 games still going on. We have glanced at all of them at this point. You and Zerg looks a little crazy. I don't know if you've checked that one out.
I mean, that was crazy when we last saw. Things maybe have settled down a little bit. These pieces have come off the board. And we see, okay, I'm trying to count these pawns. White has 7 pawns, black has 6 pawns. So white has a pawn advantage. And this a7 pawn landed on a6 a long time ago on move 14. I want to go back to that point when black played a6 and white just captured. And this pawn has survived ever since, which seems pretty miraculous given that it seemed like a weak pawn in black's territory. But going forward to the current position, this is one of white's biggest assets now, given that, okay, it's 2 squares away from queening. It is currently blockaded, but it has to be under constant eye of the black knight. And meanwhile, the knight is just stuck on a7. So sometimes to win these positions, you need multiple assets in the position. White already has a very strong asset on a6. It's possible that white might like to create some play on the king side, maybe by going for a move like queen f4. And if the queen could perhaps enter via g5 or h6, then black's king, okay, looks safe for the time being, but maybe white can start poking around to create some additional chances to make progress. And the last move that was played is queen to b4. So I assume that this is what Christopher wants to do, just bring the queen into black's territory. And this is not an easy move to stop. And queen f4 is basically unstoppable. And now it's a question to black. Does he just have to sit around and face his doom, or is there any counterplay? One thing that white does have to pay attention to, let's imagine black just plays a waiting move. Let's say like queen d8 and then queen f4. When the queen moves to f4, it does concede the b file. And maybe black's queen could enter via b2 or via b4. So this could get crazy. Queen h6, queen b2. And white has to be careful as well. So it's a very intriguing game. These situations don't happen too often where, okay, black is very much restricted. Like there's already the a pawn. Seems like white is in full control. It's just a question how Christopher is going to make progress. And I will say that I've played Steven Zerg a few times before, and he's a tough player to crack. I've never beaten him. He's beaten me at least once or twice. Very strong player, so we'll see if the youngster can take him down.
Absolutely. Another game that in Group B that I'm looking at to see if any progress can really be made. Once again, Jacobson and Mora Diabate, the game with the trapped rook on b4.
Mm-hmm.
And the h pawn of Jacobson it has advanced to the 6th rank, but I don't know if anything can be working here for white. Is this even?
I mean, with black's move rook d8, it seems like the rook is just waiting around.
Yeah.
Like Akshat has no active play here. After h6, king h8, okay, white has got the pawn to h6, but now what?
Right.
And the pawn can only go so far. If pawn h7, that would concede the g7 square, which white probably doesn't want to allow. So, I mean, the only idea in this position that I see is the one that you mentioned earlier, rook f1 to a1 to try and kick the knight. And it's a question, Does he go for it? No, he went for rook f6. Perhaps more ambitious move, focusing on the king side, perhaps targeting this pawn on e6, somewhat of a backwards pawn. And the problem here for black would really like to play pawn e5, perhaps try and open the position and exploit white's king. But whenever e5 is played, white would probably be more than happy to capture it, and then that would free up the rook on b4 via the fourth rank. And it seems like Alshan is still stuck, doesn't want to make any commitments. e5 is not the type of move that he would like to play, letting this rook activate very quickly. So I do like this move, rook f6, seems like a very controlled move. And I mean, white's plan might be just bishop f7, just going after the pawn. I'm thinking like bishop f7, king g6. There's only so much progress that white can make. But if bishop f7 is played, black might have to play rook d6, and it just seems like black is very much stuck. I'm wondering if maybe even the king could come to e5 to just create an outpost with the king. The problem with an idea like king e5, it does allow knight to c6. So always have to be careful of the knight coming back into play when you might least expect it. But Alshan has a lot of time here, and because seems like he's the one on the defense, he might start to use his time, and this could be a very long fight. I mean, if he feels under pressure, if he's uncertain about anything, he's going to take his time, and this could lead to a game which could go well beyond another hour or hour and a half.
Do you see the rooks being traded off the board and this thing goes to a draw perhaps in the future, or do you think that one of them is likely to make some kind of mistake? I mean, is a mistake likely in this kind of position?
I feel like white is the one who's trying to kind of poke and prod and provoke a mistake. Sometimes when you have full domination, but you're not crashing through, sometimes the way you win is by provoking a mistake. And the way to do that is to sometimes move around, try different ideas, try and wear down, tire out your opponent. Because the longer the game goes, the more tired these players get. And I know Alshan has been recovering from being sick the last few days. So I don't know if Brandon knows this, but that might play into his strategy of prolonging the game and trying to just consume or force his opponent to consume as much energy as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're giving out like the fight corner secrets here, but the thing is, there's so many players in this field who came to St. Louis and they're like, I'm either jet lagged or I've been sick, you know. It's like half the field, so you know it is what it is. What I'd like to do right now, though, is talk about some upcoming programming that the St. Louis Chess Club will be presenting here, right here on YouTube and our affiliated websites. So this is the Fall Chess Classic, first of all, and you're not going to have to wait long for our final seasonal event this year. It's the Winter Chess Classic. It's going to be the same format as this one. We have 2 10-player round robins with a $36,000 prize fund up for grabs, and you can watch that at uschesschamps.com. And then not too long after that, we have a Norm event. It's called the St. Louis Invitational. Once again, 2 10-player round robins with a $15,000 prize fund, and that's because these two fields are exclusively fighting for norms, as well as that prize money. But we're going to have a field looking for their GM norms, and then a field looking for their international master norms as well. Now, on to bigger things. On the world stage, we have a little something coming up called the World Chess Championship from London, England. Today in Chess is the name of our show, where we take a look at the game of the day, starting on November 9th and going through the 28th. And who knows, it may go past the 28th if there's a playoff, if the match is tied 6-6. We invite you to join us at stlouischessclub.org and on our YouTube channel as we look at one of the most anticipated World Chess Championships ever, as Fabiano Caruana is the first American to challenge for the title, the lineal title, since Bobby Fischer in 1972. And also, to complement that, in Today in Chess, we have the Women's World Chess Championship, which is going to be crazy because it's a 64-player knockout event. as Zhu Wenjun doesn't stand a good chance to retain her title as she runs the gauntlet from the very first round of 64 all the way to the finale. That starts on November 2nd, actually, but we will have coverage starting on November 9th along with the World Championship. And then we round out the year with the Grand Chess Tour finale. It's in London. The London Chess Classic has a new format this year, where instead of being just another points event for the GCT, we've ended the point stage. And we know the top 4 players that are going to the London Classic to play in a knockout. It's going to be a series of classical, rapid, and blitz games with $300,000 prize fund on the line. And the winner will be the 4th Grand Chess Tour champion. And, I mean, is it too far-fetched to say that Fabiano Caruana could be walking out as the World Chess and Grand Chess Tour champion?
That would be incredible. I mean, I'm rooting for Fabiano. If he wins the World Championship, wins the Grand Chess Tour, that's got to be a spectacular finish to the year. But, I mean, chess fans, it seems like, have so much to look forward to these next just couple months.
They really do, yeah, and that's just going into the end of 2018. It really doesn't ever stop here at the St. Louis Chess Club. Even the events that aren't here, we've got you covered. And a reminder, we are still going to be with you for the next 5 days. We've got 5 more rounds of this. We're only halfway home. There are still 5 games in progress in these rounds, but I'm not sure if any of them are going to end very soon. Eric, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it seems like some, I mean, the game's still going. A lot of players have had the extra time to kind of settle down, take their time, and I would expect a lot of these games to be pretty big fights. I do want to go back to the Sergei Azarov-Konrad Holt game for just a moment, because earlier I was thinking that Azarov had good winning chances, having material advantage. In this position, we can see he's still up a pawn, but it's obstacle are bishops, and I don't think that white has any great chance to break through. Pawn a4 was just played. These endings are very tricky. Sometimes they're deceiving. You might think that black just has a fortress, when sometimes it can take some very precise defense to hold on. It's very clear that white would like to play a5 and then maybe someday break through. The problem for white is this bishop is always defending along the long diagonal. So if black just plays, let's say, a waiting move in this position, just improve the king with king f6, and white plays a move like pawn a5, then black can keep waiting. I should mention there's a trick here where if black plays bishop e1, attempting to provoke a6, white can not play a6 but play b6, and this would be a dream scenario for Azarov, breaking through 2-on-1 majority where this bishop can't really come back into play too quickly. If bishop take a5, they simply take a7, and if pawn take b6, very key move, pawn a6, and there would be no bishop f2 due to the fact that the pawn on b6 would be obstructing the bishop. So bishop e1 would be just a terrible blunder. The bishop
Wait
should
a second,
stay.
Eric. Can
Yeah.
you? I apologize.
Sure.
After the b6 that you speculated, could bishop b4 happen?
Bishop b4. The problem is white just wants to take on a7, make a
Okay.
queen.
Yeah.
If pawn b7, there would be bishop d6. But okay, of course the bishop should stay along this diagonal. And I'm not sure how white is going to end up making progress. Maybe there's one trick here to play king g2. But it is black's move. Let's say black plays another waiting move, like okay, king f7. If white plays king g2, this could be very sneaky. It leaves the pawn on h4 undefended, but if bishop take h4, then we still have the same idea. b6, and this bishop is now not in the right position to defend against this queenside breakthrough. And again, if pawn take b6, pawn a6. So I think what might happen is we're going to see these pawns come to a5 and b5, and then we're probably going to see king g2, where the bishop will probably be chased away, and then white should have the plan of perhaps maneuvering his king to the queen side, or maybe there's still some hope for white to come home with a full point here, given that this bishop seems constantly tied down to kind of stopping this breakthrough. And meanwhile, the king is also a bit tied down. If the king runs too far to the queen side, that would allow white to play bishop g6 and pick up the pawn on h5. So it's a very intriguing position, and I think the fact that white has this majority combined with the fact that this pawn on h5 is a long-term target, there's still some chances for Sergei to perhaps grind down this endgame.
Looking good for Sergei Azarov. Well, I think we are running into the end of our program for today, so we'll dip out in just a moment. But any final thoughts for today, Eric?
I mean, this event has been fun to watch so far, lots of exciting games. I do want to make a note here that our pumpkin feels a bit lonely, and it's been a while, but I did buy a slightly smaller pumpkin a few days ago.
No, you didn't.
To add to this pumpkin, needed some additional decoration.
Has a stem.
It does have a stem.
Is this even a pumpkin? It looks awfully small.
Pumpkins come in all shapes and sizes.
All right. I'm sure there's a metaphor for life somewhere in there. So that'll do it for today. We thank you for joining us. This show was produced by the world's greatest production B team. Tammy Hyde was the streamer today. Our graphics and audio man is Isaac Schrantz. Technical director is Danny Machuca. And we invite you to join us tomorrow on Sunday for round number 5 as we come in 2.5 hours late, 3:30 p.m. Central Time at uschesschamps.com. The round begins at 1 p.m. Central, so you can check out the games as they happen on the Chess24 module on the site. So, I'm Ben Simon.
I'm Eric Rosen.
And until tomorrow, we say so long from the Show Me State.